If you haven't seen already, the Brat album cover recently changed and it's now like rotting or rusting, and this is after Charli previously changed the album cover around the Coachella weekends to kind of just scribble out the word Brat, and this paired with all the recent breadcrumbs she's been leaving kind of left me wondering what's next for this album. On top of this, during her Coachella performance a couple weeks back, she flashed some messages on the big screen hinting at where she was going with the future of Brat. Like in week one, I don't think it was much more than her just putting the idea out there of Brat and Brat Summer as a whole can be over soon, with her flashing messages like, does this mean Brat Summer is over, and duh, it was over last year, then saying she wouldn't know who she was if it was over, before ending it off saying, wait, I remember I'm Charli and please don't let it be over. But things got more interesting in week two, where she really pushed the idea of her being ready to bring the whole Brat movement to an end, with her first asking again, does this mean it could finally be over? Then putting messages that said maybe it could be time for another summer and maybe it's time for me to go, and then ending it saying maybe it's time to make way for, then naming a couple artists who are on track or already dropped albums like Young Lean with Jonathan that released a couple days ago, Kali Uchis with Sincerely that's set to drop on the 9th, or it's already dropped based on when this video is released, and a big one, ASAP Rocky, who's set to drop Don't Be Dumb sometime in the following months. But nonetheless, she finally ended it off saying, you can't dread the end if it's over. We got a couple more hints during her recent tour dates, like the one in Brooklyn. She did the same thing with the whole messaging and essentially said that she's not ending Brat after thinking about it, and again reiterating that she wouldn't know who she was if she did. And her backdrop during her tour has been continuously rotting as the days go by. Considering the recent album cover change and the scribbling, I'm personally thinking she's going to take a different route with something stemming more on anti-Brat, which on one end I could see, being a bummer, since this album is at this point beyond iconic, even while approaching 2025 summer, and on top of that, it created its own movement with the marketing behind it. But on the other end, I can see how it is fair if she's ready to kind of bury the hatchet, since this album dropped back in summer of 2024 and has already gotten some pretty good critic reviews, with Anthony Fantano rating it a 10, and if you know him, he doesn't give those out too often. It also won 3 Grammys with Best Dance / Electronic Album, Best Recording Package, and Von Dutch in particular, a song off of the album, winning Best Dance Pop Recording. And Charli even technically released 3 versions of this album. But again, my main reason for bringing all that up is to really put into perspective just how amazing this album is, and how, in my personal opinion, I think it's going to be a notable look back when the decade is over, and it could even be in the conversation for classics of the 2020s when, this decade is all said and done. She kind of shared the same testament of eventually having to let go of Brat in a TikTok uploaded towards the end of April, which I'll play right here.
Thinking about how it's really hard to let go of Brat and let go of this thing that is so inherently me and become my entire life, and I started thinking about culture and the kind of ebbs and flows of the lifespan of things, and how when you get a level of success you can kind of become oversaturated and then people want you to disappear, which I understand. I'm actually sort of a believer in that, because I think it allows artists to retain their cool when they're like so in everyone's faces and then they vanish. But I'm also interested in the tension of staying too long. I find that quite fascinating, and what that does. But yeah, it's like, obviously it's hard to just be like, okay, it's over now. Like, I kind of want it to go on and on and on, because it is who I am. It's like, I've been thinking about Brat long before the record came out. I've been sat there on my own for 2 years prior thinking about how I'm going to communicate this record to the world, not just the music, but the whole visual identity of the album. Yes, music videos and photos, but also the marketing and the rollout and the language and how I communicate with you guys. And
now, I did cut it off a bit early, but as you just heard, Brat is her, and because of that, she put so much thought into this album so that people will get her message in the same way that she imagined it in her brain. From the music that is nothing short of captivating, to the marketing that really shot it to a new level and gave this album a sense of identity. So for her to move on is like burying a part of herself, but she also understands that sometimes when artists are too in your face all the time, they become oversaturated, which is something that she's not completely against, since it gives the artist time to step back and reevaluate what direction they want to go in. In a recent interview with John Shave, a British producer who worked closely on her Brat album, we also get a better idea as to just how much this album meant to Charli, and I'll play a quick clip of that right here.
When making this record, did you feel it was going to be like a left of center weird something, or did you feel it was going to be the biggest record ever?
No, I mean, I honestly think our sort of horizons were focused on the fan base and not thinking beyond that at all. And actually that informed her sort of will not to compromise. So I feel like I could safely say I don't think that she made any compromises or concessions for any kind of outside thoughts, whether that's thinking commercially or thinking, I think she was laser focused on her fan base.
That's an artist's dream, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's probably ultimately what resonated beyond the fan base, is that it's such a kind of bold, uncompromising piece of work, even across all the
And
tracks.
is it lyrics where you then pretty much leave the room and let her do the lyrics, or do you debate the words and come up with ideas together? How do you do
I think,
lyrics?
well, with this, she absolutely, because it's her sort of personal message and story, she absolutely would have led on it completely. But she is such a collaborative writer that she will always be kind of, seeking your thoughts, or can this be better, or is, have I said this the best possible way? And so it's this kind of process of then steering and shaping and just kind of like working out the nuances of exactly how you want it to land.
Nice.
Now, as you heard, Charli really had her fans in mind when bringing this album to life. So because of that, she didn't compromise any of her ideas to fit into any mainstream standard, and it was that exact boldness and creative direction that made not only her fans love it, but the mainstream media as well. And like John said in the interview earlier on, for your vision to be received better than you had in mind is all the more fulfilling. And on top of this, we get some insight into particularly the song So I, a song that Charli specifically dedicated to Sophie Zion, a British songwriter who was a close friend and collaborator of Charli, who passed away in 2021 after an accidental fall. And this track really dug deep into her mourning mindset after losing Sophie. This interview did an amazing job of explaining their headspace while working on certain tracks, so I'd highly recommend checking it out if you're interested. But I say all of that to really kind of put into perspective just how much thought Charli and her team put into this album. It seems like everyone around her had a good idea of how Charli wanted this album to come out, and they all kind of came together to bring this vision to life. So for all of it to come together perfectly and see the success that it did is not an accolade to just move on from. It really helps to show Charli's mindset when it comes to what direction she may take Brat in the future. And lastly, an article from Radio X back in February had a title that made it seem like Charli was looking to take a musical pivot. It started with Charli talking about making an album consisting of mainly guitars, which honestly seemed like she was kind of just talking here at first, until the article also referenced Finn Keon, a producer who also played a big role in the creation of Brat, and essentially said that Charli is looking to do something completely different, before doubling down and saying the musical conversations they've been having since the last installment in the Brat series has been pushing anti-Brat. He ended off that statement saying that he doubted it would stick, but in my opinion, based off how the album is looking with the scribbling and the rotting, it is totally possible that they brought it back on the table. Based off of all the clues and whatnot, I personally think we could be seeing a new era coming pretty soon. But with that, I also think, considering just how much this album and era as a whole means to Charli, she's gonna make sure that she wraps it up the same way it started. And while I can sit here and talk about the success of this album and how I think it's gonna be a staple for albums coming from artists in the same space, but at the end of the day, I think me and everybody else can agree that music truly comes down to how you feel when you listen to it and the message behind it. And with this album in particular, it wouldn't have seen as much success as it did if it didn't resonate with millions of women the way it did. And while I can acknowledge the fingerprint this album is going to leave on the internet for a while and appreciate how good the music is, it has themes that focuses so well on the duality of women and the struggles that they face that, as a male, let alone a straight male, I truly can't put into words or describe. There's numerous videos that help me get a better understanding of this album that are more qualified than me in that regard, but I say all of that to say that I think Charli understands how this album touched people and is essentially an author writing a book with this era and ensuring that it starts just as strong as it ended. Nonetheless, leave your thoughts down below in the comments. I'll be sure to link every single video that helped me out in the comments as well. But what do you think Charli is going to do next? What's your favorite song on Brat? And let me know what you think I can do better at. My name's Sam, and I hope you enjoyed.